Disclaimer: it's inspired by reality, shaped by imagination.
What happens when music legend Morris Day, known for his flashy style, unfiltered opinions, and iconic stage presence, sits across from Jennifer Hudson on her own talk show? At first, it seemed like a reunion of two powerhouses, a soulful singer and a funk pioneer, trading stories, laughter, and memories of music history. But within minutes, the energy shifted. Jennifer, with her trademark warmth, asked Morris about his legacy, his controversies, and the balance between staying true to himself and respecting others in the industry. Morris, never one to bite his tongue, fired back with candor so sharp the audience gasped. What began as playful banter quickly spiraled into a heated clash about respect, ego, and the price of fame. Jennifer's insistence on accountability collided with Morris's fierce defense of his persona. The crowd, once laughing, sat stunned, torn between admiration and discomfort. And then, in a shocking, unscripted twist, Morris Day pushed back his chair, delivered one final cutting remark, and stormed off Jennifer Hudson's stage, leaving Jennifer, the audience, and millions watching at home reeling. This wasn't just an interview. This was a showdown.
The band played Jennifer Hudson's theme song with extra flair that afternoon, the brass section hitting notes that seemed to shake the rafters of the studio. The camera swept across a packed audience, cheering, clapping, some already on their feet, before panning to Jennifer herself, radiant in a shimmering emerald dress. Her smile was wide, her energy warm, as she walked to center stage. "Ladies and gentlemen," Jennifer's voice boomed, her natural charm filling the space, "we've got royalty in the house today. A man who helped define funk, who strutted across the stage like he owned every inch of it, and who's still turning heads decades later. Please welcome Morris Day." The crowd erupted as Morris strutted onto the stage. Dressed in a sleek purple velvet suit and matching fedora, he twirled his cane dramatically before tipping it toward the audience. His trademark smirk was plastered across his face, and he paused to adjust his shades before embracing Jennifer in a half-hug. "Jennifer," Morris drawled, dragging out her name like he was on stage in the middle of a concert, "you finally got some class on this show." The audience laughed nervously, half unsure if it was a joke, half thrilled at his bravado. Jennifer chuckled too, though her eyes narrowed just slightly, clocking the remark. "We got class all the time, Mr. Day, but today, it just got funkier." The crowd cheered, sensing the chemistry. They sat across from one another. Jennifer perched elegantly in her chair while Morris leaned back, legs crossed, cane propped dramatically against his seat. The opening questions rolled smoothly at first. Jennifer asking about his early days with the Time, his collaborations with Prince, his larger-than-life stage persona. Morris lapped it up, sprinkling his answers with humor and exaggerated swagger. "I taught Prince a thing or two," he said with a wink, prompting gasps and laughter. "He won't admit it, but we all know who had the better mirror game." Jennifer smiled, but she leaned in, her tone sharper now. "You know, Morris, people talk about your confidence, and sometimes they call it ego. Do you think that ever got in the way of your career?" The question landed like a cymbal crash. The audience murmured, intrigued. Morris tilted his head, smirk widening. "Ego? Darling, when you are the show, it's not ego, it's fact. You don't apologize for the sun shining, do you?" The audience laughed, some clapping in support, but Jennifer wasn't letting it slide. She folded her hands, her voice still warm but edged with steel. "But you don't think sometimes confidence crosses into disrespect? People in this industry, people who worked with you, have said you could be difficult." The room hummed with tension. Morris leaned forward, removing his shade so the audience could see his eyes, sharp and defiant. "Difficult," he repeated slowly. "I call it setting standards. If someone can't keep up, that's on them, not me. Greatness comes with expectations." The audience responded with a mix of applause and nervous chatter. Jennifer nodded, but her smile tightened. "So you're saying anyone who had an issue with you was just not on your level?" Morris leaned back again, slipping his shades back on with deliberate coolness. Exactly. You don't climb to the top worrying about who got their feelings hurt on the way up. The audience gasped, half in awe, half in shock. Jennifer's brows furrowed just slightly, her usually disarming warmth now mingling with challenge. Well, some would say the mark of true greatness is how you treat the people on your way up and on your way back down. The audience roared with a mix of applause and oohs, sensing the spark catch fire. Morris didn't miss a beat. He adjusted his tie, smirk unbroken, and said, "Sweetheart, I've never been down. I'm Morris Day. I stay up." The audience exploded, some laughing, some clapping, others shaking their heads. The line was pure Morris, cocky, unapologetic, and daring Jennifer to push further. And Jennifer, ever the powerhouse, looked at him with a steady gaze, her smile unwavering, but her eyes flashing with resolve. The spark had been lit.
The crowd was still buzzing from Morris's last remark, laughter mixing with murmurs, when Jennifer leaned in closer. She tilted her head, her smile polite but firm, her voice calm but with a sharper undertone. "You know, Morris, you've always carried yourself like the star of the show, and no one can deny your talent. But talent alone doesn't excuse everything. Some people felt you overshadowed, even disrespected the very people who helped build your career." The audience let out a collective ooh. A few clapped, sensing the question cut deeper than the playful banter earlier. Morris chuckled, his cane tapping rhythmically against the floor. "Disrespected? Listen, Jennifer, I came up in an era where you either commanded attention or you got forgotten. Prince knew it, James Brown knew it, and Morris Day definitely knew it. If somebody felt overshadowed, maybe they just weren't shining bright enough." A ripple of nervous laughter crossed the studio, but it wasn't as full-throated as before. Jennifer caught it, leaned back in her chair, and let the silence stretch before responding. "So you don't think you ever went too far?" she asked, her tone direct now. "Not even once? You don't think maybe the mirror routine, the bravado, let's call it attitude, rubbed people the wrong way?" Morris adjusted his hat, his smirk unfading. "Darling, rubbing people the wrong way is how you make 'em remember you. Nobody's talking about the polite ones." The audience groaned and laughed at the same time, split between admiration for his bravado and discomfort at the arrogance. Jennifer's eyes sharpened. "But Morris," she pressed, "legacy isn't just about being remembered. It's about how you're remembered. Are you proud of every way people remember you?" The words hung heavy. The audience clapped loudly at her point. Morris's smirk twitched, but he quickly masked it with a scoff. "Pride is for the history books, baby. I'm about the headlines, and the fact we're here today still talking about me tells you everything you need to know." The audience gasped, half shocked, half impressed. Jennifer, unshaken, smiled coolly and leaned forward, resting her chin lightly on her hand. "See, that's the thing, Morris. Headlines fade. Songs last, memories last, how you treat people last, and when people say Morris Day was too busy being Morris Day to notice anybody else, that's not a headline, that's a shadow on your story." The audience erupted, cheers, applause, some even shouting, "That's right." Jennifer's delivery landed like a mic drop. Morris shifted in his chair, his jaw tightening behind the smirk. He tapped his cane harder against the floor, as if keeping himself steady. "Jennifer, with all due respect, you weren't there. You didn't live the grind, the competition, the fights just to keep your spot. It wasn't kindness that got us noticed. It was swagger. And if I scared a few folks along the way, that's just the price of greatness." Jennifer leaned back, her expression calm, but her voice firm. Or maybe it was insecurity disguised as swagger. The crowd exploded again, the mix of applause and gasps deafening. Morris froze for a beat, his smirk stiff, before letting out a sharp laugh. "You're good, Jennifer, you're real good, But don't psychoanalyze me on your show. I came here to talk music, not therapy. Jennifer smiled wide and just slightly, her eyes unblinking. But music is therapy, Morris, and for millions of people it heals. But can the same be said about the way you carried yourself? Did it heal or did it hurt? The audience was electric now, hanging on every word. Some clapped furiously for Jennifer, others shouted, "Let him talk." The studio energy felt less like a talk show and more like a courtroom drama. Morris shifted in his chair, his voice lower, his tone edged with irritation. "Jennifer, you've had your journey, and I respect it. But don't sit there and act like you've walked in my shoes. Funk was a battlefield, and I didn't just survive, I conquered." Jennifer tilted her head, her voice unwavering. "But sometimes, Morris, conquering means you're standing on people you should have been lifting up." The audience roared, cheers, claps, some even rising to their feet. Morris clenched his jaw, the tension visible in the way his hand gripped his cane. His smirk was still there, but it was thinner, tighter, as if holding back something sharper. The playful spark of Act One was gone. What sat in its place was heat, raw and undeniable. The debate had stopped being about anecdotes. Now it was about character. And neither Morris nor Jennifer was backing down.
The studio's energy had shifted. What began as laughter and playful back and forth was now thick with unease. The audience leaned forward, sensing the verbal sparring had crossed into deeper, uncharted territory. Jennifer's last words, "Conquering means you're standing on people you should have been lifting up," still hung in the air. Applause had faded into an uneasy silence, the kind that makes every breath sound louder than it should. Morris leaned back in his chair, exhaling slowly. His cane tapped once, twice, before he stilled it. The trademark smirk faltered just for a second, and the audience caught a glimpse of something raw beneath the performance. "You know, Jennifer," he began, his voice lower than before, "people see the strut, the mirror, the attitude, and they think that's all I am. They don't know what was behind it." The audience hushed, every eye locked on him. He slipped off his sunglasses, setting them on the table between them. His eyes looked weary but sharp, like a man caught between defiance and confession. "When I was a kid, I didn't have much. Grew up in a house where if you didn't make noise, you didn't get noticed. If you didn't push, you got pushed aside. That mirror thing everyone laughs about, that wasn't vanity. That was survival. I had to convince myself I was worth something before anybody else would." A wave of quiet gasps rippled across the crowd. Jennifer leaned in, her tone softening. "So the bravado," she said gently, "was armor." Morris nodded once. "Exactly. You call it ego, I call it protection. In this industry, if you show weakness, they eat you alive. Prince understood it. But me, I didn't have his patience. I built walls, big ones. And yeah, maybe some people got cut while I was stacking those bricks, but I was just trying not to disappear." The room stayed hushed. Some audience members clapped softly, not in excitement, but in quiet support. Jennifer's eyes softened. "That's powerful, Morris. Thank you for saying that. But don't you hear yourself? Those walls didn't just keep paying out. They kept people who cared about you from getting in." The crowd erupted into applause, many nodding, some even shouting, "That's right." Morris looked down at his hands, his fingers drumming his cane. For a heartbeat, the mask slipped. He looked exposed. Then his jaw tightened, and the smirk returned. "Care is a luxury, Jennifer. This industry doesn't reward nice guys. It rewards the ones who shine the brightest. If somebody mistook my shine for selfishness, maybe they couldn't handle the glare." Mixed reactions poured from the audience, claps, groans, gasps, all at once. Jennifer didn't flinch. "But Morris," she said calmly, "you're not on stage right now. Nobody's trying to dim your shine. We're here to see you. And if you keep hiding behind the glare, how will anyone ever really know the man behind the mirror?" The words landed like a blow. For the first time, Morris hesitated. His smirk faded and his voice dropped. "Because if I take the mirror away, maybe there's nothing worth looking at."
Gasps rippled through the studio. Some audience members clutched their mouths. Jennifer leaned forward, her voice warm and steady. That's not true. The music, the soul, that's what people love. The man behind the mirror is who they've been rooting for all along. The shine was fun, but the heart, that's what lasts. The audience erupted into cheers, claps, even a few standing ovations. Morris blinked hard, slipping his sunglasses back on quickly. "You're too good at this, Jennifer," he muttered, his voice low, almost defensive. Jennifer smiled gently. "I don't have to be good. I just want you to believe you're more than the reflection you've been hiding behind." The crowd roared again, the studio vibrating with emotion. For a fleeting moment, it seemed like Morris might open up further, might let the vulnerability stay. But just as quickly, he straightened his jacket, forced the smirk back into place, and leaned away. The raw truth had cracked through, but the walls were rebuilding just as fast.
The applause from the vulnerable exchange had barely faded when Morris leaned back in his chair, slipping into his sunglasses again like armor. The audience could sense it. Whatever glimpse of honesty he'd given was being buried beneath layers of bravado. Jennifer, however, wasn't ready to let the walls go back up so easily. She leaned forward, voice steady but pointed. "Morris, you just told us the bravado was protection. But when you keep falling back on it, aren't you just proving the people right who say you never grew past it?" The audience gasped, then broke into scattered applause. Morris's smirk stiffened, his hand tightened around the handle of his cane. "You've got some nerve, Jennifer. Sitting there acting like you know me better than I know myself. You've had a good run, but don't lecture me about growth. I was selling out arenas before you were even dreaming about winning American Idol." The crowd erupted, cheers, groans, even boos mixed into the chaos. Jennifer didn't flinch. She tilted her head slightly, her eyes calm but her words sharp. "And yet, here we are, you in front of an audience that loves you, but feeling the need to remind them how important you are. That's not growth, Morris. That's fear talking." The studio exploded with applause, shouts of "That's right" echoing from the back rows. Morris pushed forward in his seat, cane jabbing the floor with a sharp crack. "You know what? I didn't come here to be psychoanalyzed. I came here to celebrate music, my career, my legacy. And if this is what you call a conversation, then I'm done with it." The audience gasped. Some shouted, "No, don't go!" Others clapped nervously, unsure whether to support him or Jennifer. Jennifer remained seated, her composure unshaken. She glanced toward the audience, then directly into the camera. Her silence spoke louder than any words. This was no longer just a talk show moment. It was television history. The breaking point had come, and it had left the studio in shock.
The studio was still buzzing, a cocktail of shock and excitement swirling through the audience. Some leaned over to their neighbors, whispering furiously, while others sat frozen, hands pressed to their mouths. Morris Day's cane had barely stopped echoing backstage, but the energy he left behind felt like static in the air. Jennifer sat composed, her green dress shimmering under the lights, her hands folded in her lap. She allowed the moment to breathe, gave the audience time to take in what had just unfolded. The cameras lingered on her face, capturing the quiet strength in her eyes. Finally, she spoke. Her voice was calm, measured, but carried the weight of everything that had happened. "Ladies and gentlemen, sometimes what you see on stage isn't the whole story. Sometimes the shine is just a shield. And sometimes when that shield is challenged, people don't know what to do except walk away." The crowd erupted in applause, a wave of support washing over her words. Jennifer smiled softly, nodding at the audience, before continuing. "I don't fault Morris for being who he is. We all wear masks at some point in our lives. But the lesson here, the one I hope you take with you, is that real strength isn't in the mask. It's in the courage to take it off." The audience rose to their feet, clapping, cheering, shouting her name. The camera swept across rows of people, some visibly emotional, others nodding as if they'd been reminded of their own truths. Backstage, producers scrambled, trying to coax Morris back, but Jennifer carried on as though she knew the moment had already written itself into history. We love Morris Day for his music, for his showmanship, for the funk he gave the world. That will never change. But maybe, just maybe, we'll also remember today as the day he reminded us that even legends carry wounds. The applause grew thunderous, the entire room shaking with the force of the ovation. Clips of the confrontation would soon explode across social media. Within hours, hashtags like Morris Day Storm Off, hashtag Jennifer Keeps It Real, and hashtag Behind the Mirror would trend worldwide. Some fans would defend Morris fiercely, praising his unapologetic confidence, while others would side with Jennifer, applauding her courage to confront ego with compassion. The divide would only fuel the conversation further, ensuring the moment's place in pop culture history. Jennifer, ever the professional, closed the segment with grace. At the end of the day, it's not about tearing someone down, it's about lifting the truth up. And I believe the truth always finds its way through. The band struck up a soft tune, and the audience gave her a standing ovation that lasted long enough to delay the next commercial break. Jennifer took a deep breath, her smile radiant but her eyes thoughtful. She had just faced down one of music's most flamboyant personalities and walked away not only unshaken, but celebrated. The legacy of the clash was sealed. Morris Day's Storm Off would be remembered as a flashpoint, but Jennifer Hudson's composure would be remembered as the anchor. And as the credits eventually rolled, the takeaway was clear. Sometimes the loudest message comes not from the person who storms off, but from the one who stays seated, steady, and unafraid to tell the truth.